Hello, everybody. We're so glad you could join us today for this get-together for Perspectives. Our guest today, Dr. Curtis Sparling, assistant professor, associate professor here on the campus at Rogers State University, Department of Technology and Justice Studies. That's quite a mouthful. What do you do?
So, first off, yes, it is a mouthful, but those two academic areas actually do align, and I suspect we're going to have a chance to talk about that. What I specifically do in that department is I predominantly teach cybersecurity, information assurance, and some networking courses.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. We truly are. Right now, the United States, by way of the President and the Vice President, have issued warnings that we need to really be on top of the power grid security in terms of computers, because if it's not up to snuff, they can shut down the power grid, which would pretty well bring us to our knees. Yeah. Open a lot of dams, cause a lot of trains to collide, bring airlines to the ground. I mean, the ramifications just go on and on. How do you emphasize the for good cybersecurity?
Gosh, frankly, that's the million-dollar question. And you are absolutely correct in your assessment. It is a dire situation. We are living, frankly, in a time, a season, if you will, of our lives to where our critical infrastructures as a nation are vulnerable to bad actors, whether those bad actors are involved with a nation state or frankly a group of individuals. And I'd like to say, well, I will say that at RSU, we train individuals to be able to put up those kind of defenses, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the most vulnerable aspect of organizations are the people that work for that company. They become unwilling actors simply because they do not have the information assurance awareness on what is required to protect their company. I talk about this in many of my classes. The weakest point of an organization is the employee sitting in front of their PC at work every day.
How big a factor is complacency?
I don't even know if I would say complacency is an issue so much as awareness. Awareness as to how those bad actors can get into an organization's infrastructure and do all of those things that you just discussed.
I think the thing that, the concerns I have are totally different because I'm standing on the outside looking in and I'm going, well, banking, what happens to banking? Okay, you go to TransFund, you want to make a withdrawal, you pay your bills and then you start getting phone calls, you didn't pay your bills, you order something and one right after the other, the dominoes start to fall.
It does, and that goes into the information security aspect of what we teach here at Rogers State. It goes hand in glove with cybersecurity and cyber awareness, but it's typically a concerted effort by a group of individuals that have ill intent, and what you just described could be part of that process.
Let me see if I can divide the good actors from the good amateur actors. There are folks out there my age and older with a computer who might hear this and say, oh my God, we got a problem, without realizing or recognizing the enormity of that problem. But they're not the target, not necessarily the target.
Right.
The targets are going to be the folks that, if you crash them, could start to chip away at the very foundation of the country.
Yes. And I wish I had an answer other than yes, but that is an absolutely accurate statement. I guess the good news story is we as a nation have done a pretty good job of protecting, and I'm going to say the term again, our critical infrastructures. There are actually 16 critical infrastructures that our government has deemed necessary for us to function as a nation. And federal agencies have been put in charge of each of those, and they offer different training programs, different resources, so that these civilian organizations can harden their defenses. And of course, the cybersecurity and information assurance, information security aspect of it is that all-encompassing umbrella of those, I'm going to say 15 at this point, because the 16th is cyber awareness.
When I say you, that's all-encompassing.
I see.
Of the folks you work with. So you and the folks you work with have just inked a deal, signed a deal, made a deal, wink and a nudge, whatever, with NSA, a 5-year contract. What's that about?
So we have, and I'm really excited and frankly proud of RSU here in Claremore to have signed this education partnership agreement with the National Security Agency. And what that allows our learners to do is the possibility of one-on-one mentorship with an NSA intelligence analyst throughout their educational process at RSU, as well as opportunity for internship with the NSA in Maryland. The ultimate goal of this 5-year agreement is to have a possible direct path of hire between Rogers State University graduates into the National Security Agency.
Wow, I see 2 avenues here. One, that brings to mind to me that you and your colleagues will fall under different security rules. And number 2, is that going to cause you to start looking over your shoulder?
No, not at all. And I shouldn't have put my head back and sounded so flippant about it.
You didn't.
Frankly, we should all be looking over our shoulder in relation to our digital footprint, where we are on the internet, how we expose ourselves personally. But in relation to what we're doing here at RSU as an institution, no, not at all. We're doing good work.
Well, I have to tell you, thank you for your service way ahead of time. But there's another element to your service you just mentioned before we started taping.
Oh, sure. And that is actually our unmanned aerial system degree. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. I actually wrote that degree at the same time that I wrote the cybersecurity degree. And that is, quite frankly, a function of need based off of emerging technologies and where we're going in relation to worker safety. And what I mean by that is we can, I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, but think of our utility companies. Currently, we have individuals that have to climb poles to do inspections on transformer. You could train an individual to fly a drone, do that inspection process in real time, and have 4K video of what they're actually looking at. And I'm going to stick with linemen here a little bit.
Sure.
Also, everybody has driven down the highway and seen those miles of power lines. Those have to be inspected. Instead of putting an individual in a truck going through that process, you could put out a drone. And the natural progression of that is firefighters, police officers, those individuals not having to put themselves at risk, having the opportunity to possibly put up a drone with IR capability, looking for hot spots, ISR, intelligence reconnaissance for the police force. Gosh, the list just goes on and on for the capabilities of unmanned aerial systems.
Forgive me, my mind is a little warped, but I'm sitting here, you're laying this out in a very, very easy to understand manner, and my brain flipped a switch and went to a recording made by Glenn Campbell many years ago. I am a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road.
Sure.
talking about inspections on the lines. And I think that's the conception most of us had, and may still have, about the power grids and the lines and all that drones can now handle.
Absolutely.
And a guy never has to leave his truck.
And they're being utilized today by the larger utility companies.
Sure.
And that doesn't even go into account of agriculture, whether we're talking about livestock or actually planting and harvesting crops. It is just far-reaching.
About a year ago, I had a chance to talk with some folks who were pitching an idea. I don't know if they got it off the ground. I'm not sure where the development of this project went, but it was a new method of weather forecasting. And their line to me was, we'll utilize drones on specific layers of the weather as a front moves through.
Of course.
And my question was, doesn't that put the drone in harm's way? And the minute the words were out of my mouth,
right, you knew the answer.
I knew the answer.
I'm actually a retired naval officer, and we've used unmanned, I'm going to back up a little bit. We've used unmanned aerial systems, unmanned underwater systems, quite frankly, for decades. And it was for that very reason, that light bulb moment you had on not, frankly, putting warfighters in harm's way when a life or a little bit of technology, the scale obviously tips hard in one direction.
Gosh, this is I hope you're keeping a journal, because I would read it, I have to tell you. It's an intriguing topic, and what you're involved in, and I hope you all have keys to the doors, and I hope the doors are locked.
We do.
Because we need guys like you. Got about 45 seconds. Does this also lend itself, the drone issue, to waterways, to fountains, to the lay of the land for farmers, for companies, for corporate structures, and even the power grid?
Sure, absolutely. So in addition to taking video, we could do 3D mapping of the terrain, and my learners are out there doing internships for construction companies, doing those exact same processes. So picture the individual out, a land surveyor. We could do the exact same thing, programming a drone to do a specific flight pattern and have that exact same information in a 3D model within 60 minutes of the flight.
You know, I feel like I'm sitting here talking to NSA. This is really weird, man. Hey, thank you for taking time to come visit. Let's do this again.
Absolutely.
In fact, I'd like to come over, if it's all right, knock on your door with a camera and maybe get some shots of you guys at work.
For sure. We have a maker space over there, and we're building drones. We have networking going on, lots of lights, bells, whistles, and we'd be happy to have you.
Terrific, Doctor. Thank you so much for taking time.
Thank you.
We'll do this again. We're going to take a short break. We'll be back with more. And this time, we're talking about the Discovery Lab right after this.